they can start hearing us. So we'll see. All right, it's possible we should start vamping because it's possible that it's just being slow on the.
Awesome.
It's saying live to me.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to assume we are live. So hello, everyone. I am Kelly. This is Two Broads Talking Politics. I am on with my co-host, Sophie. Hi, Sophie.
Hey, Kelly.
You've got the color-coordinated hair that matches our logo, so very good job on that.
Yeah.
And we are joined by returning guest, Representative Sean Casten of the Illinois 6th District. Hi, Representative Casten.
Hi, nice to see you. And Sophie, next time we do this, let me know and we'll color coordinate together.
I like it.
Amazing. So last time you were on the podcast, my son Teddy was interviewing you, and that was right before COVID hit. So it was the last time I did any interview. I think you were the last live interview we did, actually.
Oh, well, I'm not sure whether that's good or bad, but it's nice to be back.
Yeah. So we are talking to you today about hot FERC summer, which is excellent. We're super excited about, and it's working, I think, because I'll tell you, for one, I'm a pretty wonky podcaster on a pretty wonky podcast who spends a lot of time looking at Congress and things like that. And I had never spent any time thinking about FERC before now, and now I do. So yes. I think this is working.
I would love to tell you that this was all carefully planned out, but if I knew this would work, I would have done it a long time ago. You drop a couple Fergie lyrics, in a 60-second floor speech, and all of a sudden you're the top trending thing on People magazine and national media. But more importantly, like, people are now like, wait, what is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission? Why does it matter? And this stuff does matter. And if you care about climate, if you want to make sure that we get the ship turned around as quick as possible, the F to the E to the R to the C is the place to be.
All right. So first question is just, what is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission?
So they are essentially exactly what you would think they are. They are the agency that regulates our energy sector. They are a down in the weeds organization. They are an independent agency. They are required by law to have 5 commissioners. No more than 3 can be appointed by any one party. They were substantially held back under Obama because Mitch McConnell slowed the release of a lot of the ability to confirm a lot of his nominees. But they are the people who decide how will power rates be structured in our country? How will we make sure, how much are we going to allow for capital recovery? What sector is going to pay it? Where are we going to build transmission wires and gas pipelines? If you object to that, what's the process for objection and how are we going to make those decisions? These are really big, meaty issues. And if you want a clean power sector, if you want a reliable power sector, those decisions are going to come down to this really important body that, as I said in my speech last week, hopefully a few more of you are now taking attention to. But for a long time, people weren't, it was the most important climate agency, I think, that nobody's ever heard of.
So why right now? Why sort of focus on FERC now?
Well, candidly, a big part of the reason is because Neil Chatterjee, who was the chairman, who was formerly a staffer to McConnell. And actually, I get along well with Mr. Chatterjee, and I think his head's in the right place. His term ended in June. That means that there are now 4 people on FERC, 2 appointed by Republicans, 2 appointed by Democrats, and we are not going to get any progress on anything that matters until there's a new appointment made. I know the president's got 3 people who he's considering nominating, but nobody's been nominated yet. And until that nominee is named, they can't be confirmed by the Senate. Until they're confirmed by the Senate, they can't start the hearings. Until they do the hearings, they can't make the rulings. And until they make the rulings, people are not going to change what they're building in the power sector. So it's really, really important to get that person named. And that's, ultimately is the big driver for why we wanted to bring some attention to the agency right now.
So you're introducing a series of bills related to FERC. Can you talk some about what the intention is behind those, what you hope to accomplish? What can Congress do to make things really work well?
Sure. So the first one was done with Senator Heinrich, and I should give him credit. This is a bill that he's been pushing for a long time, which really relates to how we make sure that we build the transmission wires that connect the different parts of our system. right? And you can see that tangibly, when Texas had all those blackouts recently, Oklahoma didn't, right? Why didn't they? They had the same weather. El Paso didn't, which is in Texas. And the reason was because we have a network of different grids in the country, and we actually don't do a very good job of building the wires that connect those grids together. And there's a lot of complicated reasons for that, which I can go into if you want, but FERC has the authority to fix some of that. So the first one is dealing with those interregional transmission issues. The second bill, the Energy Price Act, is a reintroduction of a bill that we crafted last term, which really addresses the fact that clean energy and cheap energy are synonymous. If you put a solar panel on your roof, I can guarantee you will never go to bed at night and say, I better check what the price of power is tomorrow to see whether it makes sense to run my solar panel, right? Because it's always going to be free. Ditto if you put more efficiency in your home, if you have a geothermal plant, a wind turbine, et cetera, et cetera. The FERC has an obligation to keep energy costs low. They also have an obligation to keep energy prices reliable. And we're starting to hit this tension that as we keep building cheap energy, in other words, as we keep building clean energy, it's getting harder and harder to justify the investment in new energy sources. That's a great problem to have, but it's totally counterintuitive because we've been talking for years about how clean energy is expensive, which is just a dumb lie, period, full stop. It's cheap. That creates a problem because what will FERC do if there is not an incentive to build more energy sources? And so what we've done in the Energy Price Act is basically point out that because of some Supreme Court decisions, most recently the endangerment finding, FERC, I would submit, and with this bill we'll have congressional support for it, that they have an affirmative obligation to preferentially make sure that clean energy is built. So as they're figuring out how to go through, let's bring that forward, which is essentially saying, if you squint your eyes, we could create a carbon price in the electric sector just through FERC. We don't have to wait for congressional action. So that's a big piece of that one. And then the third one was the Right to Timely Rehearings Act, which essentially recognizes that there are a lot of people who are affected by FERC rules. There are the people who build the power plants. There are the people who depend on the energy from those assets. And there are the people on whose land you're going to run the transmission wire across or might be subject to eminent domain. And the right to timely rehearings is basically just trying to make sure that your ability to have your voice heard is not a function of how much money you have going into the process, if you will. And to make sure that, if you have a dispute, you can have a timely rehearing and not essentially be bogged down in time or money that you don't have.
So what do you want how do you want everybody to be thinking about promoting these, as you call them, wonky bills about this wonky agency, and obviously this sort of hot FERC summer is a way to get at that. But, what's your advice for, how we talk to our friends about this, how we talk to our family about this, how we get people really interested in this idea? For a start, I would not lead with the Right to Timely Rehearings Act. That'll put them to sleep. I think the most important thing is to recognize that number one, that clean energy is cheap energy, and number two, that making a transition to a clean energy economy is hard, but it's hard for exactly the opposite of the reason you think it's hard. We've framed this for years as how are we going to equitably allocate the pain, the economic pain of that transition? And in reality, the challenge is how do you equitably allocate the gain of that transition, which is still hard. And that's what FERC can do. I mean, take what I was just saying. We build all this clean energy and the price of power falls because the way we've structured our markets, 100% of that benefit accrues to energy consumers. How do we make sure that energy producers still have an incentive to build the assets that we're going to need to keep that power, which is essentially saying, how do we take this pie, which per George W. Bush, the pie is higher, right? How do we take that dollar pie and make sure that everybody gets a slice, right? And that's a rate structure question that we can go through. How do we go through, even in our domestic politics, building clean energy is going to be hugely positive for Illinois, where I live. We got a lot of wind. We've got a lot of industries that benefit when energy costs are cheaper. It's going to be real good. And indeed, it has been good. It's been a boon to the region. It's not going to be so good for West Virginia.
right? West Virginia depends on fossil energy extraction, and it's going to be hard for them. Well, given as we know we are creating more gain than pain, how do we make sure that some of that gain is shared with West Virginians, because they're also Americans, right? And we're going to have a pie to divide, but how do we think about how to do that? Those are really good problems to have, right? But we need to approach this with a certain degree of humanity and making sure we're looking out for everybody. And by the way, if you want to make this really complicated, really complicated, but let's just sail into the hard stuff, I would submit to you that the same question between Illinois and West Virginia, you could say is a tension between the United States and Iran, right? And therein you have the international challenge with this. Why is Russia so hostile to a transition to clean energy? Because Russia's economy depends on fossil energy extraction. That's a hard geopolitical problem, but I think if we can acknowledge that we're all humans and we're in this together, and acknowledge that this is a win-win, we just have to make sure that the gains are shared equitably, then we get through this.
So Hot FERC Summer is working for me because, like Kelly, I'm kind of wonky, but I had not heard of FERC before. Do you find that it's working for your fellow representatives in Congress? Are you seeing a lot of support for these bills?
It is. It is awesome and frankly so darn funny. I've had members like Jan Schakowsky has a bill that's been out there for a while that she's led to create an Office of Public Participation at FERC. And she's just been delighted because she's been doing the same thing of how do I get people talking about this? And all of a sudden, like hashtag FERCalicious kind of blows up on you, right? So, so that's been great. I've had some other members who I won't name who approached me in the cloakroom last week and said, they said, what the heck is FERCalicious? Because it seems to be blowing up. Everybody in leadership is saying, we got to understand what this is. And I don't understand what it is. So it gives an opportunity to educate some of my colleagues about that as well, right? And then I think my favorite conversation was I was recently getting in an elevator, and this woman got on and said, everyone in our office is loving Hot FERC Summer. And I said, oh, that's great. Where do you work? And she said, the White House. So yeah. It's getting some attention.
But more importantly, what do your teenage daughters think of this?
There are, I think in general, they see their role appropriately as keeping my ego in check. And so they are usually the first one to say, oh, Dad thinks he got some retweets, woo, woo, woo. And that's appropriate for them to say that. That said, they were pretty psyched that it was the Daily Show's moment of zen last night. It's starting to touch some communication channels that resonate with them, which, as a family perspective, that's cool. But if I just sort of generalize that, my daughters are 14 and 16-year-olds who are the ones who are going to bear the costs if we don't get this right, and that the channels that they listen to are now talking about this. That's awesome, right? I believe the children are our future.
So one thing I think, Sophie asked earlier, why now? And, there's lots of answers to that. But part of the answer, of course, is, as you said in one of your floor speeches, like, this is it. This is the last moment. Like, the best time to take care of this would have been decades ago, but we didn't. Yeah. And so now we have to. So that's the other piece of this, I think, that I want to help people understand, as I'm talking to friends and family, as I'm talking to my kids about what to do about this, is the true urgency. And it's finally a little bit easier for people to see because we see these terrible weather events that are happening. We see the grid shut down in Texas. But, how urgent is it? And how do we get that urgency across?
So I got to be careful how I respond, because what's hard about that question is that if it's very easy to lose hope. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to cause people to lose hope, because we have the potential to turn the ship around. But what is scientifically necessary is so far beyond what anybody thinks is politically possible right now. And we've got to get people to understand that. We knew, and I've said this before, and thank you for saying that, the best time to act was 30 years ago. When Jim Hansen testified before the Senate, what was that, 87, I think? And they basically said, at 1.5 degrees of warming, we're going to be in a bad way, and we're in a trajectory to get there. We're now 1 degree of the way there. So we are 2/3 of the way to that future. And that science has been politicized and demonized and misrepresented. And as a result, we haven't meaningfully acted. And so now here we are 2/3 of the way to that point that we warned is going to be irreversible. And we've now got large chunks of America saying, I don't like the fact that my entire community is on fire. I don't like the fact that if I want to continue to live in Miami Beach, I'm going to have to figure out how to fund a huge seawall, which is going to be too short 50 years from now. We've got people who are, seeing, daytime flooding. We've got Lake Michigan has had, its all-time high water mark and its all-time low water mark within 12 months of each other. So people are now seeing tangible. This is no longer just the pointy-headed nerds talking. People are seeing tangible evidence. And the problem, which is so scary, is that those changes in many cases are irreversible. We will, in my lifetime, melt all the glaciers in Glacier National Park. It'll take thousands of years to rebuild them, right? Even if we went backwards today. The last time CO2 levels were this high in the atmosphere, sea levels were 50 feet higher. The scientific models are very clear, and they've done a very good job of predicting where the temperature is going to go. And we know that there still is the same amount of water on the globe as there was then. So we know that we're going to have 50 feet higher sea levels. The models are a little harder to predict timing, but there's a broad consensus that by 2050, we can count on at least 2 feet more sea level rise, even if we went to zero CO2 tomorrow. At 2 feet of sea level rise, Miami Beach is gone. Most of Florida is gone. Good chunks of Washington, D.C. are gone. Lower Manhattan is gone. These are so, and this is within our lifetime, right? It is coming. So what are we going to do, right? Can we do things on mitigation? Can we build seawalls? Can we provide some resources to help people move to higher ground in a managed way rather than waiting for them to be angry? Because if you want to know what it looks like if people get angry, look at Syria, right? You saw a huge desertification of Northern Africa, and lots of people got angry because they couldn't feed themselves. The consequences are frightening. Now, I said I don't want to wallow too much in the losing hope, but that is the reality we've gotten into. 50% of all the carbon dioxide we have ever emitted as a species since the first caveman built a fire 1 million years ago, 50% of all the CO2 we've ever emitted has been since 1991, right? Back to the Future was 5 years out of the movie theaters, right? These numbers are like, you can't really contemplate how quick that's going. Now, the optimistic side is to come back to what I said before. If we want to turn the ship around, we can do it and generate a ton of money, right? There is no good reason not to act. It is in our economic self-interest to act. It is in our environmental self-interest to act. It is in our moral self-interest to act. So let's get off the ball and start doing what's necessary and not just patting ourselves on the back because we got some, in the words of Winston Churchill, some baffling half measure across the line.
This is a related question. How do we get people to buy into taking action now when they won't see sort of some of the positive changes in their lifetime, maybe even? How do we, because we're really good as a country at reacting to things like, a pandemic happening now. We're not so good at, say, investing in in preparation for that kind of thing in the future. So how do we message this? How do we get people to buy into making these investments now?
Well, so I'm a firm believer that you should talk to people in the language that they understand, right? Because you can have a huge difference in your life right now. We just got to pick the language we use. Let's say that you love having money in your pocket and you love having a muscle car. Consider buying an electric vehicle. It's pretty awesome. The acceleration's awesome. and you're going to have more money in your pocket because you don't have to pay nearly as much for fuel, right? And that's direct, tangible benefits you can have right now. If you like having, more money and a less drafty home, put in some more efficient windows, right? You can do all those things. Maybe national security is your big issue. Well, we got a crisis on our border because Honduras got hit with 2 hurricanes in short order and caused a huge refugee caravan. It's not the only reason we got a crisis on our southern border, but it's a big part of it, right? So if national security is your issue, let's talk about how we address this from a national security perspective. Maybe health is your big issue. We got tropical diseases that are moving into subtropical regions as it gets warmer and warmer. Let's make our health system better, right? We can do all those things, can have direct tangible influence. And it comes from the fact that we've talked about this wrong for 30 years and said that there's a trade-off. There is no trade-off. The only trade-off is it is a massive wealth transfer from energy producers to energy consumers. Last time I checked, every single American consumed energy. A tiny minority of them produce energy. Take that trade every time.
So I have a guest here who wants to say hi.
Hey,
Say hi to me.
Teddy, how are you?
Hi. Good.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Are you excited to be getting back to school soon, hopefully?
No.
He's honest.
Oh, there you go. There you go. How's your summer been? Put it that way.
Good.
Yeah. Have you been able to get outside and play with your friends a little bit?
Outside? Yes.
Oh,
Not
okay.
as much on the ladder.
Yeah.
but fun.
Well, that's good. Hey, being outside beats playing video games online. Right?
That's not what I think.
I don't know. I'm doing my best here. Anything on your mind? Any questions that you got, Teddy?
No, you had a question about the.
Oh, right. Well, I don't know how to phrase this.
So Teddy saw a magazine article about a flying car, and he was wondering if you knew anything about the future of flying cars.
I didn't wonder.
I don't know much about the future of flying cars, other than that if we were to invent flying cars, I would love to have flying cars if only I owned a flying car, because they'd be like super efficient. I question whether I want everybody having a flying car, because they might be flying over my yard, interrupting my picnics. So I don't know how that's going to work. But I don't. I think we're a long way from having flying cars.
Well, in the magazine article, it was called the air car, and it could transform from a working airplane to a working car in 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Wow.
Probably
That's
costs
pretty
like $1 billion, though, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing it's probably not very fuel efficient also. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, that too. All right. Thanks, Teddy.
Thanks, Teddy. Nice to see you. Hey, today's I know today's Barack Obama's birthday. Send him a note.
Oh, yeah. Say hi to President Obama.
Just because last time we talked, I know he said that he wanted to interview Obama next. I don't know if that ever came through, but on the chance you're
That did
following
not
up,
yet come through. Barack Obama, if you're listening. Teddy wants to interview you. He also wants to interview Oprah. So Oprah, if you're listening.
Okay. All right. I'm sure she is.
So I have one unrelated to climate change question for you, and that is, how can we get more people in this country to accept that getting vaccinated is important right now, and can be the way out of what is clearly a worsening Delta plus Lambda spike that is going to once again disrupt our lives?
It's so tragic, isn't it? I mean, the fact that the best predictor of whether or not you're going to be exposed to Delta at this point is increasingly, the local politics in your region, right? I don't know if you saw Harvard School of Public Health does this analysis of the vaccination rates by congressional district, and the top 30 congressional districts are all Democratic, and the bottom 30 are all Republican. And that's not because Republicans are dumb or not science affirming, but they've basically taken a political decision to oppose science, right? And so now you've got people dying. Florida's overwhelming their hospitals, all to own the libs. I don't know. I mean, as someone representing a kind of a purpley district, I certainly do whatever I can to try to let people know the importance of getting vaccinated, that I got vaccinated, that it's safe, that kids are vaccinated. But I still walk around and I see people with these, who I know are not getting vaccinated, with signs saying, unmask the kids, which is basically saying, not only am I not vaccinated, but I would like our kids to please be agents transmitting this disease. And it's deadly, right? And, so the ultimate answer is we really, really need Republican leaders who are respected by the Republican electorate to decide that they are capable of leadership, right? And I say that because, I've had conversations with my friends across the aisle who said, well, I can't really lean in on this because, I'll lose the base, right? And this is where the base is. And my comment to them is, when you ran for this office, did you say I'm incapable of leading people, or is that just a decision you've come to later on, right? Yeah. Stand up and lead. No one's going to fault you for saying, I want you to live, right? Or that the Enlightenment was a step forward in human progress. And I don't mean to make it political, but I think the challenge is that as long as we pretend it's not political, we're not addressing what at this point is the primary risk factor for transmission. The way that we make Delta go away is everybody gets vaccinated, period. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, if you're not vaccinated, wear a mask, social distance, because you can also make Delta go away that way. The way that we make sure that Delta continues to spread and continues to evolve into, even more dangerous, subspecies is to not get vaccinated, not wear a mask, and go around and just become, a human petri dish.
I can't imagine there's anyone listening or watching that isn't vaccinated. But if for some reason you're not, don't do it for us. Do it for Teddy, because Teddy is too young to be vaccinated. And it's terrifying to me. Teddy and Arthur, Sophie's son, they're all too young. So please, please.
No, and just like, I'd encourage everybody, go read the Sermon on the Mount, right? We look out for the least of us, right? Blessed are the meek. Maybe there's good reasons you can't get vaccinated. Maybe you're an organ transplant recipient and the vaccine just doesn't work very well on you because you're on immunosuppressants. If that's the case, wear a mask, right? Keep yourself healthy and make sure you're not spreading it to others. And you won't have to do it forever any more than you had to do it forever for, polio and smallpox and mumps and tetanus. But we just have to get up to that herd immunity. Do it for Teddy, do it for, everybody who's got kids who, can't yet get the vaccine, and for folks who are medically not going to be able to take the vaccine.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe I could just convince you to do it for yourself. But if that's not sufficient, do it for the greater good.
All right. Well, we've got to let you go because you have another meeting. But thank you so much for joining us again. And how can people, one last time, get involved in Hot FERC Summer? What do you want them to tweet? What should we be doing now?
This is the point where I would say, follow us on all of the social media channels. I think Rep Casten is the official one, and we're on Twitter and Instagram and other platforms that I don't understand. We are always open for new ideas of how we can continue to amplify this. And so if you've got, somebody said the other day that they'd love to see a Rihanna reference, FERC. Yeah, no promises, but, we're open to good suggestions, and, Fergie, Megan, if you're listening, let's collaborate. Maybe I got some original material I could offer up. Maybe you'd work on that.
All right. Excellent. We'll put links to all your social media on our website so people can find that and follow along and retweet too.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Great to see you both.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Teddy, if you're still off screen there. Take care.